So far, we've associated GeneXus objects executed on a web page to the interactive tasks of process diagrams. It's also possible to associate GeneXus objects executed on a smart device to user tasks. For example, suppose that we want to execute the process of entering a reservation at the travel agency from a mobile device. We will simplify the ticket reservation process we defined previously. So, we remove the validation subprocess and certain symbols we will not be using. To specify the reservation's availability, we will use the reservation transaction and its reservation available attribute. Lastly, we select the ticket reservation task and, for this example, we delete the value of the roles property, leaving it empty. And we do the same with the none start event. The first thing we will do now is apply the work with pattern to the reservation and customer transactions that are involved in the process. To do that, select both transactions, right-click, and choose Apply Pattern and Work With. We see that under the node of the customer transaction is the SD object, Work With Customer, and under the reservation transaction is the SD object, Work With Reservation. Now we will associate the SD application generated by the pattern with the ticket reservation task. To do so, we go to the task's properties, and in the SD application property, we press the button and select Work With Reservation. We press Tab and associate the relevant data reservation ID. And now we press OK. Something very important to consider when associating smart device objects is that relevant data is not mapped automatically between the diagram and the SD object. To achieve this association, we must have a procedure. We open the procedure object, reservation map relevant data, that we created previously. In the rules section, we will see that we defined a parm rule that receives the reservation and also the customer identifiers in the reservation ID and customer ID attributes, respectively. The following variables are also defined. And in the source, using the Workflow API, we obtain the relevant data reservation ID by its name and associate it to the reservation ID attribute we received by parameter. And we do the same with relevant data customer ID and the customer ID attribute. We must not forget to include the commit when working with workflow data types. As we ask for the isNull value of customer ID, we can see that we added the following rule to the reservation transaction. Now we open the Work With Reservation object, then we go to its Detail, General section, and modify the save event, adding the invocation to the procedure we just created. This will allow that, when we insert a new reservation from the smart device application, all the corresponding relevant data will be mapped. Next, we'll associate the record customer task to the Work With Customer application. And then we'll assign the relevant data customer ID. As it happens with the reservations, we must have a procedure to associate the customer ID relevant data to the customer ID parameter of the customer transaction. To this end, we've created the procedure called Customer Map Relevant Data. Let's open it. In the Rules section, we see the parm rule that receives the customer identifier in the customer ID attribute. We see the defined variables of the workflow data types, and the source implemented, where we obtain the customer ID relevant data by its name and associate it with the customer ID attribute we receive by parameter. Now we'll go to the Work With Customer object in the Detail General section. And we'll modify the save event, adding the invocation to the Customer Map Relevant Data procedure. In our diagram, we will assign the reservation availability task to the Work With Devices reservations object. This is similar to what we did before with the reservation task. If the reservation is available, then the process ends. Otherwise, we must enter a new reservation. This assessment is done with the exclusive gateway. When we double-click on the connector that links the gateway to the ticket reservation task, we see that we had already entered the condition necessary. In order to execute the process diagram we built, we must import and set up the GeneXus client for smart devices. Here we've done it already, but the details of how to do it may be found at the following link shown on screen. Once the GeneXus client for smart devices has been imported and set up, we need an invocation to each smart device object used in our process diagram. So, we must add the following code to the Workflow SD client dashboard. Alright, now we're ready to execute our ticket reservation process on a mobile platform. So, we must first do a build all, and then press F5. We can see that the Android emulator was executed automatically, showing the login screen. For our login, we will use the Workflow Administrator user, so we enter the user as WF Administrator, and use it also for the password. Upon logging in, we can see a screen showing the input and output trays. We select the input tray and press the plus button to instance a process. Now we select the Flight Ticket Reservation SD process. And we can see that the process window opens up. We press the Start button to start the process. Now we see that the process has been started, and we have the ticket reservation task pending execution. We click on the task and press the arrow button to start it. We can see that the SD object to work with reservations is opened for us to enter a reservation. We will enter a new reservation and leave the ID unspecified because it's auto-numbered. And we also leave the customer identifier empty. And now we press the Confirm button. And to end the task, we press Complete. We will see the input tray open up, so now the task pending execution is Record Customer. Because we did not enter the customer, the workflow engine assessed the condition of the exclusive gateway, is the passenger a customer, and determined that the following task will be Record Customer, which will invoke the smart device object, Work With Customers, for us to enter the customer. We now execute the Record Customer task. We enter the customer data, and then we press Confirm. To finish, we finalize the Record Customer task. The next task that appears pending is Reservation Availability. We click on it to open the task and go on to execute it. Note that the customer was successfully assigned to the reservation because the procedure associated with the batch task, Associate Customer to Reservation, was executed correctly. We will indicate with a check mark that the reservation is available, and then we press Confirm. To finish, we finalize the reservation availability task. Now the input tray does not show any other pending tasks, which means that the execution of the travel agency's reservation process has been completed. If we had indicated with a checkmark that the reservation was not available, then the SD object work with reservation would have been executed again for us to enter a new reservation. Now we've just seen how to execute a business process diagram on a mobile device. Specifically, we've associated the objects generated by the pattern work with to the tasks. But we could have also associated a smart device object we created, such as, for example, a panel for SD. In this case, we generated the application for smart devices on Android and executed it using an emulator. However, it is possible to prototype on a physical device and generate applications for other platforms, such as iOS devices like the iPad or iPhone. To learn more about smart device applications, visit the link shown on screen. And to explore all the possibilities of the GeneXus BPM suite, visit the wiki link.